everybody. Welcome to Dive Deep. I'm Shelby Cornett, and I'm the ministry assistant here at Cambridge City Christian Church. And this is Danny, the pastor.
The pastor.
He's
I don't know.
the pastor.
Are you saying that with kindness or with
Yeah,
the
always.
pastor?
Nothing
Yeah.
but kindness.
Nothing but kindness. Okay. All right. Good. Good.
Yep.
Glad you're being kind today. That bodes
I'm
well
always
for.
being kind.
That bodes well for our podcast today. That maybe I won't get any tough stuff from you today.
Yeah, maybe. If the opportunity presents itself.
If the opportunity presents itself, then you'll be hard on me. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I'll do what I feel I need to do.
Okay. All right. It is your show, so
It is.
I can't say
You're
a whole
just
lot.
a guest.
I'm just a guest.
Just a guest.
Just a guest. Yeah,
It's all about Shelby.
it is, as always.
I'm humble.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right. Yeah, that's what we're talking about this
Yeah.
week is humility. Not a lot of humility going on right here
My
around
bad.
this table.
Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So, anyways, this week,
Yeah.
Thriving in Babylon
Thriving.
series,
Yeah. Mhm.
and we talked about humility,
Yeah. Mhm.
and it's our next to last week.
It is. We're almost there. We've only got 1 week left
Yeah.
after this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you ready for my lightning round of questions?
Ooh. So I've heard that I have to do these within a minute.
Within a minute.
I have to answer
Because we're trying
these
some new stuff, so
on social media. Yeah. So we have to have them within
so
a
you
minute.
can't be
Wow. This is going to be
can't use your pastor brain.
okay. All right. This is going to be tricky. What?
I mean, you have to use your pastor brain, but
I don't have much of one, but I'll give it. I'll be putting it to the ultimate test here.
all right. Are you
Okay.
ready?
I think so. I'm ready. Let's have it.
Okay. Why do you think Nebuchadnezzar was such a roller coaster of a man?
Nebuchadnezzar was what you would call a double-minded man. It talks about it in the book of James. James talks about double-minded people. He 1 minute is for God, the next minute he's against God. 1 minute he's worshiping God, the next minute he's worshiping all these other gods. Same thing can happen to us. We can get wrapped up in things in life. We can get wrapped up in the world. We can get wrapped up in our own feelings and emotions. And I think that's a lot of where Nebuchadnezzar was. And he was so double-minded because he was prideful. He was full of himself.
Yeah.
And when you're full of yourself, it's a whole lot harder to look at anybody else.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we see a lot of this back and forth going on here in the book of Daniel.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. How does serving others benefit not only God, but me?
Yeah, so we have to remember that when God created people, he created them in his image. So in essence, when we are serving people, we are serving God. So that's a really important distinct thing that we have to remember. So that means that I have to serve people I don't agree with, or serve people even that we would consider to be sinful, which all of us are sinful to some degree. But when we look at Jesus' ministry, he served people who were sinners. When we look at Daniel, which is what we're going through now, Daniel loved people even though they worshiped gods that didn't exist. We serve people because it makes us find what humility is. Life isn't about us. It's about others and it's about God. So the more we serve others, really, the more we find our true selves.
Yeah. How can we work on recognizing our humility?
So I think the most important thing in looking at humility is for us to consider, okay, what is my mindset? Like, is my mindset centered around other people? Is my mindset centered around looking for ways to serve, help, love, encourage other people? Or am I really busy trying to figure out the next thing I'm going to buy on Amazon, or the next thing that I'm going to do with my friends? I mean, I guess the biggest way to figure it out with humility is my life focused more on me or focused more on others? And when it's more focused on me, that's a really small world that we're living in.
So loving God, loving others more and more.
There you go. That's it.
All right. That was my questions.
Okay.
But do you have anything you wanted to add for this week?
So yeah, let's dig, just a little bit into the passage itself. We were in Daniel chapter 4, right? And the story of Nebuchadnezzar, like you mentioned in the lightning round, Nebuchadnezzar is this dude. He's a roller
I
coaster.
know. I was like, man, get it together.
Yeah, like we see in Daniel 1, he's sort of like he's awful and mean, but then he ends up relying on Daniel to interpret a dream, right? And as we go through the rest of the book, we see him kind of this back and forth that's going on. And so then when we come here into Daniel 4, he has another dream.
Mm-hmm.
And the dream shows a tree that's being cut down, and the tree represents him. And Daniel's put in this really tough position because he knows what the dream means.
Mm-hmm.
And that it means that one day Nebuchadnezzar is going to be humbled.
Right.
In a very profound way. And he's caught, okay, do I tell the king this and maybe risk my life, or do I lie to him and tell him what he wants to hear? Well, he tells him the truth because that's who Daniel is. He's a man of integrity. And he says, King, as much as I wish this wasn't the case, you are going to have a very big mental breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
And so it tells us that soon enough
he becomes a bird.
It happens, yeah. And he dresses up like a wild animal, and it's a thing called zoanthropy. It's a common, well, I won't say it's common, but it's within it's known within the psychological world of believing that you're an animal. So you live like an animal, your hygiene's like an animal, eat like an animal, all these things. And so it seems like Nebuchadnezzar has this period of time. The scripture, I believe, tells us it's 6 times, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for 6 years. It seems like he kind of just lost it, and eventually he is restored when he repents. And what's interesting in the story is that the zoanthropy kicks in when he's out walking around giving himself the glory. He's like, look at what I've built. Look at the kingdom I've done. So we see him in the maybe the height of his narcissism, which we've seen a lot of his narcissism in this book. The height of his narcissism, and then God. He was humbled quickly. Mm-hmm. And it took him a while to finally come to the realization, you know what, I need to repent. Mm-hmm. And he does. And then it tells us really this is a letter. What's interesting in Daniel 4, it's like a proclamation almost.
I know. Like when we started reading it, I was like, "This is different."
Yeah. It's weird because usually when you think of a story, you start at the beginning and you go to the end. Mm-hmm. Well, in Daniel 4, it starts kind of with the ending.
Yeah.
It's Nebuchadnezzar recognizing God's sovereignty. Then he tells the story. And then at the end, there's the ending.
And that made it seem even more like a roller coaster.
Yes. Yeah, because he's like he's all with God, then he's not with God, then he is with God. Yeah. It is a different way of writing this chapter. But nonetheless, I really think it is neat because he's kind of giving you a preview of what's to come. Mm-hmm. And I would kind of liken it a little bit to like a movie. Like if you go to the movie theater, you'll see a preview, right? That happens, a movie's coming in 3 months or 6 months or whatever. That's kind of the first part. Then you have the movie.
Yeah.
With the ending part, the happy ending, right? So
right.
It's a little bit like that. But it's a very interesting interaction that Daniel has. After the whole scene with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the previous chapter, where you would have thought, okay, Nebuchadnezzar realizes that God's there. Yeah. I mean, he saw Jesus, right? But that didn't seem to get through. We think that the story...
And that was like the second time, right? Because after the first dream interpretation, he was like, good.
Yeah. And you got to remember, too, it seems like there was about 30 years between the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and what happens in Daniel 4.
Okay.
So evidently Nebuchadnezzar doesn't have a very good memory because he forgets a lot of things. There's even some belief that he even forgets Daniel to some degree, because when you look in the beginning of the story, there's not really any reference to Daniel until a little bit later in the story. So yeah, I mean, Nebuchadnezzar, he's a very interesting character.
Yeah.
A man that is full of himself, but yet is humbled and seems to, for a period, get his life in line with God, only for it to drift away again. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about him being a roller coaster, but
we're all somewhat of a roller coaster.
Yeah. I mean, we may not be the quote unquote king of the world like he was, but we're on
his roller coaster was just displayed for everyone.
Yeah, it was on a much bigger scale. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
yeah.
It was a really interesting story, but it does teach us a lot about humility. And I think one of the lessons that we learned was that humility opens the door for God to do things in our lives. when we think we can do it ourselves, when we think we're in control, in essence, we're shutting the door on God and saying, God, we can do this ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going to try to do things ourselves, we're limited. There's only so much
Right.
we can do. So can you imagine like the blessings and the things that we're leaving out
Mm-hmm.
because we've slammed the door in
Right.
God's face? And that's what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. It
And I
happens
think
to
we
us.
do that without realizing it
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we think that
Like
if I get enough money or if I get enough
Mhm.
fame or if I go do enough this, that, or the other, that I can in essence, it's an attempt
Mm-hmm.
to try to replace God.
Right.
I'm going to replace God with my money. That way I can take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go, not saying that exercise is bad. We should exercise and take care of the bodies that God's given us. But if our body becomes what we worship, in essence, what we're saying is, well, I don't need God. I'm going to take care of my own.
Right.
There's just a lot of that going on in this book and a lot of that going on in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Yep.
So what's this week we wrap up
Wrap
Driving in
up
Babylon.
the series, and finally everybody will get a new guest next week.
Yep.
Because Travis is going to be sharing with us. We're going to talk about wisdom. How does wisdom?
Are you sure we want Travis to share about wisdom?
Oh my! That you were waiting for that moment. I could tell you've been lining up that comment for about days, maybe weeks,
Oh,
waiting
man.
for this moment. Oh boy!
None just came to me.
All right, well, I'll let you and Travis settle that score next week.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll talk about wisdom next week.
Okay. And that ends the Thriving in Babylon
Yeah,
series.
it does. And then we'll have a couple of weeks of just we'll have a sermon on just I haven't nailed it down honestly yet because we were supposed to have graduation Sunday, but we don't have any graduates this year. So I'm still trying to nail that one down. But then the following week after that, we're going to talk about service. That's Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll start on Psalms.
Yeah, that's
this
our summer series,
That's
right?
our summer series. I'm looking forward to that. We're going to be doing our worship services a little bit different with that series,
Yeah.
so it'll be a fun series to go through.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, so we'll see you next week with Travis as we wrap up the series and talk about wisdom. Have a good week.